I'm Derek and I'm 39. I've been married to Vanessa, 34, for 6 years. We don't have kids yet, although we've seriously talked about it. I thought we had a solid relationship. We're both focused on our careers, but we always make time for each other. My best friend Tyler, 33, and I have been inseparable since high school. He's practically family. He was my best man at my wedding and the person I trust completely. But now that trust feels like a curse that started the fight. A couple of months ago, Tyler told me something I didn't want to hear. He'd seen Vanessa with another man. He said they were at a restaurant downtown, cozy but not in a just friends way. He claimed the guy had held her hand across the table and she hadn't pulled away. When he told me, I laughed. Vanessa had always been friendly, maybe too friendly, but cheating? No way. She's the one who accused me of being paranoid just for joking about her crush on Chris Hemsworth. And yet, something about the way Tyler said it stuck with me. Dude, I'm not trying to ruin this for you, Tyler said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. But if I were you, I'd listen. I told him I appreciated his concern, but that Vanessa and I were fine. Deep down, I knew he was wrong. Or maybe I hoped he was wrong. A week had passed, but Tyler's words had stuck under my skin like a splinter. Vanessa had been acting weird. Little things you wouldn't normally notice had started to add up. Her phone was always face down, and she was suddenly having late-night work emergencies that never seemed to end. When I asked her about it, she brushed me off. "You're being ridiculous," she said one evening, packing up her laptop for yet another late meeting. "You want me to quit my job just because you're feeling insecure?" I was stupid and told myself she was right. She works in finance, and the world is always chaotic. Then came the day that changed everything. It was Black Thursday for me. Vanessa had to work from home, and I had a busy schedule at the office. Around 10 a.m., I realized I'd left an important document at home. I decided to go back during my lunch break to pick it up. As I pulled up to our house, I saw a sleek black car parked outside. Not just any car, it was a Jaguar. Definitely not hers. My heart immediately started racing. I tried to calm down. Maybe it was just a coworker. Maybe they were working on something together. But the pit in my stomach told me otherwise. When I opened the door, the house was eerily quiet. A faint sound of laughter came from above. I crept up, each step heavier than the last. The laughter turned into muffled voices, and I heard the unmistakable chuckle of Vanessa. At the top of the stairs, I froze. The bedroom door was slightly open, and I saw a man's jacket draped over the banister. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to push the door open, and there they were. Vanessa was lying on the bed, her legs spread, her silk robe barely covering her breasts. On top of her was a guy I didn't recognize, early 40s, fit, confident, and really trying to get over her. He put his hand on her leg, and they both turned to me in shock, seeing me standing there. For a second, time stood still. Then everything exploded. "Who the hell is this?" I screamed, my voice shaking. Vanessa tried to cover herself up, mumbling a lame excuse. "It's not what it seems, Derek. I can explain." But this guy, the nerve of this guy, just smirked at me. "Calm down, man," he said, as if I had just broken our vows. "Get out of my house," I growled, walking closer. He stood up, holding his hands up in mock surrender, and slowly walked past me. I followed him down the stairs, making sure he didn't touch anything on the way out. Just as he was about to walk out the door, I shoved him off the porch, slammed it shut, and locked it. When I turned around, Vanessa was standing at the top of the stairs, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Derek," she sobbed. "It was just a mistake. It didn't mean anything." I couldn't even look at her. "Mistake?" I spat. "How many mistakes was it? Is this the first time, or just the first time you've been caught?" She tried to move closer, but I held up my hand to stop her. "Don't," I said. "Just don't. I can't even look at you right now." I grabbed my keys and walked out, ignoring her cries to stay, and talked. I've been staying at Tyler's ever since. I've barely said a word to Vanessa. She's been blowing up my phone with calls and texts, begging me to come home and talk. Tyler's been my rock through all of this, but even he doesn't know what to say anymore. I went back to the house yesterday while Vanessa was at work to pick up some clothes and essentials. I noticed that her robe was missing, as were some other things from the bedroom. Is she still dating him? Did she leave to be with him? My head is spinning with questions, and I feel like I'm falling into an abyss. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to file for divorce immediately, but another part of me wonders if this can be saved. 6 years of marriage, and I thought we were building a future together. How can you just throw that away? But Tyler's words had a way of sticking with me, festering like an itch I couldn't scratch. I wanted to move on. I really did. But the thought of her walking away unscathed, possibly laughing at how she tricked me, was too much to bear. So when Tyler suggested revenge, the seed was planted. At first, I brushed it off as petty and melodramatic. I wasn't the kind of guy to stoop to that level. But as the days went by, the idea took root, growing into something I couldn't ignore. Tyler was right. Why should Vanessa get a clean break after everything she'd done? Why shouldn't I fight back? She deserves it, man, Tyler said one night, tossing me a beer as we sat on his porch. You don't have to be a bully, but you do have to let her know she's with the wrong guy. What are you even suggesting I do? I asked, half expecting some outrageous social media scheme or vandalism. But Tyler's plan was subtler and far more effective. Play dumb, he said. Look like you're ready to make peace. Pretend to agree with everything she wants. And then, when the time comes, you pull the rug out from under her. Make her regret everything. About a week later, Vanessa texted me to come over for dinner. The tension between us had been palpable since the confrontation, and I was still living at Tyler's. Our communication was limited to short texts about logistics, bills, keys, mail. She insisted she wanted to talk, and despite my hesitation, I agreed. I figured this was as good an opportunity as any to start putting Tyler's plan into action. When I arrived, Vanessa greeted me at the door with her usual bright smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. The whole thing felt staged. She'd even gone all out with her signature dish, lasagna, which she made for special occasions. Usually, the sight of it made me feel warm and fuzzy. That night, I just felt sick. Thank you for coming, she said, setting the table. I know things have been tense. Tense, I repeated with a bitter laugh. Yeah, you could say that. She ignored the jab, sitting down across from me, a glass of red wine in her hand. Derek, I've been thinking about us a lot, she began, her voice dripping with false sincerity. I know I hurt you, and I'll regret it forever. But I've also done some soul-searching, and I think I've figured out a way for us to move forward. I raised an eyebrow, my fork hovering in midair. Oh, tell me. She took a deep breath, like she was preparing to administer cancer medicine. Maybe we should consider opening up our relationship. I nearly choked on my water. You're kidding, right? Hear me out, she said quickly, her tone desperate. This isn't about replacing what we have. This is about exploring other connections without losing each other. People do that all the time. It might help us rebuild trust. Her audacity was breathtaking. She wasn't even denying her connection anymore. She was just trying to repackage it as some kind of progressive, enlightened choice. My jaw clenched, but I forced myself to remain calm. Tyler's words echoed in my head. Play dumb. Make her think she's in control. You know what? I said, forcing a smile. That might work. Give us a little time to establish some ground rules, and then we'll get started. Vanessa's face lit up like a child's on Christmas morning. She reached across the table to grab my hand, her eyes misty with gratitude. Thank you, Derek. I knew you'd understand. Little did she know that I wasn't just agreeing to her terms. I was about to turn the whole situation on its head. Vanessa's best friend, Sarah, had always been interesting. She was the kind of woman who thrived on attention, with a sly smile and playful laugh that could disarm anyone. Over the years, she'd made a few comments that, in retrospect, seemed oddly blunt. Vanessa is lucky to have you, she said one night at a party, her hand lingering on mine a moment longer than necessary. If I had a boyfriend like you, I'd never let him out of my sight. At the time, I'd written it off as harmless flirtation, but now the words took on new meaning. If Vanessa wanted to explore other connections, who better to start with than someone she trusted implicitly? It was poetic justice. I texted Sarah, framing it as innocent chit-chat about Vanessa's new relationship idea. She agreed to meet for coffee, clearly intrigued. Okay, spit it out, Sarah said, sitting across from me at the coffee shop. She absent-mindedly stirred her latte, her eyes scanning my face. What is this about Vanessa and opening up your marriage? I leaned back in my chair, feigning disbelief. It was her idea, I said, shrugging. I thought it was crazy at first, but the more I think about it, the more I wonder if there's something to it, I said, feigning indifference. She thinks it'll help us rebuild trust or something. Sarah frowned, clearly skeptical. And you're okay with that? I wasn't okay with it at first, I admitted. But then I started thinking, maybe this is an opportunity to try something new. And honestly, I leaned forward, lowering my voice. I always thought you and I had a certain connection. I grabbed a strand of her hair and twirled it around my finger. Her cheeks flushed, and she looked away, embarrassed. Derek, I don't know if this is a good idea. Why not? I pressed. Vanessa said she wanted us to explore. Who better to explore with than someone we both trust? She hesitated, biting her lip. It's just complicated, but you're actually cute. Life is complicated, I said quietly. But if Vanessa is willing to bend the rules, why shouldn't we? Over the next week, I worked with Sarah, gently chipping away at her doubts. She opened up about her own frustrations with Vanessa, admitting that their friendship had always been a little lopsided. She's so self-centered, Sarah admitted during one of our coffee dates. I feel like I'm always adapting to her. I nodded sympathetically, fueling her resentment. You deserve better, I said. You're smart, funny, gorgeous. Vanessa doesn't appreciate you the way she should. By the end of the week, Sarah was on board. It hadn't been hard to convince her that this arrangement could be mutually beneficial. I couldn't wait to see how this would all play out. Vanessa thought she was pulling the strings, but she didn't know that I was now writing the script, and I wasn't going to settle for just getting even. I was going to make sure she never forgot the consequences of betraying me. Let's back up a bit for an important detail. While I was working on the arrangement with Sarah, Tyler and I decided it was time to deal with Vanessa's lover. From the texts and photos I'd collected, I knew enough about him to know this wasn't a casual fling. His name was Rick, and he was a divorced corporate executive who clearly enjoyed playing the field. From what we could tell, this guy had been through a lot of drama, a nasty divorce, a tense professional relationship, but he seemed to thrive on chaos. Let's go see him, Tyler suggested one evening. Guys like him need a reminder that they can't waltz through life cheating people without consequences. I didn't need much convincing. I was tired of sitting around and letting Vanessa's betrayal fester in my mind like a wound I couldn't close. It was time to get into all three. We waited until late in the evening, when most of Rick's office staff had already gone home. Driveway. Stay away from my wife. You thought I wouldn't know you were still together? I said, my voice cool and level. Rick's face went pale as he looked over the evidence. I didn't even know she was married to begin with, and now I thought you were divorced, he muttered, but his tone lacked conviction. Bullshit, Tyler snapped. You were at their house before all this happened. You were dating her neighbors. Don't insult our intelligence. Rick opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. We're not here to negotiate, I said, leaning forward. You finish it. Now. Or these, I gestured to the photos, will find their way to your boss, your ex-wife, and all your business contacts. His eyes darted nervously between Tyler and me. He wasn't used to being cornered, that much was clear, and his discomfort was satisfied. After a moment of silence, he muttered, Okay, I'll stop seeing her. Whatever it takes. Okay, I said, standing up. And just to be clear, if I hear your name again, you'll regret it, and my wife can't know about our conversation. Satisfied, Tyler and I walked away, the sound of Rick shuffling through the incriminating photos echoing behind us. As we left the building, Tyler clapped me on the back. One down, one to go, he said with a smirk. It didn't take long for Vanessa to notice Rick's sudden absence. Over the next few days, she moped around the house, her demeanor a mix of confusion and quiet frustration. She spent hours on her phone, presumably trying to reach him, but I became convinced that Rick had every reason to disappear from her life entirely. What happened? I asked one evening, feigning concern as she sat on the couch, staring blankly into her glass of wine. "Nothing," she replied curtly, but her expression gave her away. She was sulking, and it was almost comical to watch. Her grand plan to juggle me and her lover had fallen apart, and she didn't have the courage to admit it. "I'm here if you want to talk," I added, playing the supportive husband. Inside, I was savoring every moment of her misery. While Vanessa was struggling with Rick's disappearance, my relationship with Sarah had escalated to the point where we no longer had boundaries between us. We began spending more time together: coffee, dinner, even the occasional late-night chat. The chemistry between us was undeniable, and I tried to keep our interactions public enough for Vanessa to notice, but I had one more surprise for her in the end. She didn't say anything at first, but I could tell she was watching. Her gaze lingered a little longer when Sarah and I laughed at a private joke at a dinner party, and she tensed every time Sarah casually touched my arm or I touched her hair. The turning point came one night at another mutual friends get-together. Sarah and I were sitting on the couch, laughing about something insignificant, when Vanessa finally snapped. She pulled me aside, her voice shaking. "Are you dating Sarah?" she asked, her tone a mixture of anger and fear. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Isn't this what you wanted? We're exploring connections, remember?" Her face contorted with anger, and for a moment I thought she was going to hit me. But before she could answer, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and went into the gallery and clicked on the video. It was a clip of Sarah and me taken during one of our most passionate encounters. The way Sarah was jumping on me was out of this world, enjoying every inch of my organ. "That was so hot. You wouldn't believe it," I said coldly, holding up the screen for her to see. Vanessa's reaction was immediate and explosive. She snatched the phone from my hand, her face a mask of rage and betrayal. "You're disgusting," she screamed, drawing the attention of everyone at the party. I remained calm, my voice low and measured. "You're the one who wanted an open relationship, Vanessa. Don't get mad when I follow your rules." Her rage exploded and she launched into a hysterical tirade, accusing me of being vindictive and cruel. The guests began to whisper, awkwardly pretending not to notice as Vanessa's hysteria grew. She paced the room like a child throwing a tantrum, ranting about betrayal and disrespect. Meanwhile, I stood there, arms crossed, letting her make a fool of herself. For the first time since this whole thing began, I felt in control. Her attempts to manipulate me, to twist the story in her favor, were crumbling before my eyes. When she finally stormed out of the house, slamming the door, Sarah came up to me with a smug smile on her lips. "Well, that was dramatic," she said, handing me a fresh drink. "You could say that," I replied, taking a sip, but I think she finally understood what I was talking about. After these words, Sarah reached out to me with her passionate kiss and, taking my hand with the words, "Let me show you what you love so much," led me into a quiet room, showing off her charms there. Tyler was right. Sometimes revenge really is the best way to move on.